I want to move on and talk a little bit about the blueprint. I've listed a number of things we've worked on during the past year, in fact the past 2 years, in the blueprint. You recall it's a very broad menu of improvement activities aimed at making the lab's operations more effective, more efficient, and able to accommodate a growing menu of work, since our aspirations are to grow the laboratory and its impact. People might question that, now that we're looking at lean times ahead, whether there's going to be any growth associated with that, and with the lab strategy. And of course, the plans are there for that, but it'll be slower in coming, I'm pretty sure. So can't we back off on all this stuff? And I think the answer is no. I think the answer is no because when times are leaner, there's more competition. I think there's as much premium on being effective and efficient in lean times, even if we're, to some degree, only maintaining our programs and only slowly growing them, than in a bullish period when we think we're going to be able to increase the lab by leaps and bounds. We need to be competitive in both those situations. And so I think the blueprint is important in all times. Some of the things we worked on. We actually articulated to ourselves what we think the lab's values are. We're now making that part of performance expectations for all of us. We instituted integrated facility management and completed a peer review and an employee survey on this. Now, this is an area where as I'm going to come to in a minute in more detail, because I think this is an area where there's a lot of work yet to be done and a lot of concern about whether this is headed in the right direction based on the input that I get from the laboratory. I'll come back to that. Research operations coordination and oversight is sort of the companion to integrated facility management on how the tenant interacts with the landlord, so to speak, how research actually gets conducted in our facilities. Leadership development and training, this has been a big effort this year in developing a model for what the set of competencies are that constitute good leadership at the laboratory, and then starting, as we're doing now, to evaluate all our present level 1 and level 2 leaders to see how they're doing against that model, and then fixing that as we need to. So this has been a big effort, which I expect to have a big payoff going forward in the future. We're working harder at developing succession plans, which is a very important aspect at all levels of the laboratory, and I think this has been kind of haphazard in some areas, and I think we're putting more attention on it now through HR and all of the directorates. We've instituted new business models for safety, for financial operations, and for HR, with deployed services in some cases, centralized services, or hybrids of the two in other cases. And I think those are beginning to yield benefits. We have a part of the blueprint called the Competitiveness Improvement Project, which I think is an extremely successful effort to apply Lean Sigma techniques to the work that we do every day to try to take unnecessary work out of many of our processes. A number of processes have been selected to go through this and have been significantly improved as a result of it, and to the point where we have actually trained experts in Lean Sigma techniques across the laboratory and are probably now in a position of seeing more interest in doing this in various areas than we know how to handle at the moment. So it's actually growing of its own accord, and I think will become an institutional practice here. So that's what I want blueprint projects to do. I want them to not only be projects that get finished, but to make a change in the laboratory that we know how to actually carry on into the future. We've instituted infrastructure planning at a higher level through the blueprint process. The area-based PPE we talked about before came about in conjunction with blueprint projects. We're making improvements now in the safety observation program and instituted a institution-level risk management committee that now meets weekly to look at both the scientific and the operational risks to the laboratory, tried to rank them as in terms of what we need to pay attention to most importantly right now and what can wait, and then develop mitigating strategies for those. This is, of course, the work of management in general, but taking an institutional view of this with all the relevant players around the table is actually a higher level of attention on it than we've given it before. I think it's very important for us. And of course, we've done effectiveness reviews of the blueprint projects. So, I mentioned areas where I think we're making headway, and I wanted to come back to integrated facility management, which was probably the most ambitious piece of the blueprint, and it's about a year since it was rolled out, just at the beginning of FY11. And I would think it's fair to say that this effort has attracted more attention on the part of the staff and feedback from the staff than any other part of the blueprint, in part because everybody's involved in it. Either you're a tenant or a landlord here, and so when it comes to doing your work in some facility, and so everybody's touched by this. We have a history of doing these jobs a certain way, and the IFM was meant to institute a better way of approaching that, and I've heard plenty of stories both of successes in this area and of failures in this area, and even people telling me, well, that's not working, let's go back to the old way. I want to remind you that the old way is the way in which we blew up that well house. That is, loss of configuration management on an old facility, inappropriate use of procedures to maintain that facility, leaving it in an unsafe condition, and it blew up. Nobody got hurt, if you recall, because it blew up later that night, and it's in a kind of isolated location. But that's what the old way led to, and what led to a big investigation, a series of internal reviews, and a set of ideas about how to address those weaknesses called the Leadership Action Plan, and it got rolled up into the blueprint. So we're not going back to the old way. We're not blowing stuff up here anymore. And we're not unless we intend to as part of a research project. And we're going ahead with this. So I want to remind you that this is a long-term effort to get this thing fully built out. I think we understand through a lot of effort, the peer review, the survey, the interaction with the staff, where the weaknesses are. There are structural weaknesses and then also weaknesses of people being able to integrate this into their work after decades of doing it a different way. So a cultural issue. I think we can get over both, and we're going to get over both, and we're going to go ahead with the integrated facility management model. And I do believe over time the successes, which we're already seeing, will outweigh the problems, and we'll get the benefits that we were looking for.